Hey dudes, B Junior here once again from Endurance Productions Movie Reviews. I'm going to sit down and talk to you. I've been in a Stanley Kubrick and science fiction mood here lately. I've been watching tons of science fiction and been taking a little break from horror. I always come back to it, no worries. But I wanted to do a little Stanley Kubrick review tonight, and hopefully I'll do it justice because I have a lot of respect for most of his movies. I don't like every single one he's ever made. That Barry Lyndon stuff, can't get into that. Never really have been. I've tried it a couple times. Didn't take. But the one I want to talk to you today is a recent a Blu-ray purchase, 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick, adapted from the book by Arthur C. Clarke. What can I say about this, guys, that it hasn't been said before? 2001 is the definitive space epic. I mean, this is the movie that took science fiction movies out of the B-movie status that it had during the late 60s when this was made, or mid-60s when this was made, into full force a serious movie. He took it and made it a serious movie, and basically it caught on through the younger crowds from the psychedelic look of the film, plus people just lifted an eyebrow to it. They were like, all of a sudden, this isn't B-movie fodder. This is actually a serious movie. And it's very, very thought-provoking, as we all know, if you've ever seen 2001. I don't know what I can say about this movie that hasn't already been said, but I'll give it my little approach that I always do. I'll talk to you a little bit about the story, then we'll go through the special features. Guys, the movie, it lives up to its title. It is the year 2001, and it is a space odyssey. What you have to realize first about this movie is that it was made it was made in the mid-60s probably, and it wasn't released until 1968. A lot of preparation went into this movie. Stanley Kubrick and his team went to NASA of that day, which you have to remember, NASA was still in its infancy basically as far as going to the moon. Space exploration was still at a small pace. We were at the space race with Russia. A lot of the stuff, the space shuttle has not even been designed yet. I mean, these lunar missions were just beginning to start, and it was just a different time and era. So what Stanley Kubrick did, he did it the right way, in my opinion. He went to NASA of the day and interviewed them about what their thoughts and views for the future was as far as space exploration. He took his cues from those ideas and the technology of that time and basically just built on that and made just a huge epic story out of that. And what is so kind of miraculous and also kind of creepy in a way is how many things he put in this movie that actually came to pass later in technology. One of which comes to mind is the video phone. We all use it every day. It's called Skype. It's on the internet. We all have laptops with these little video, they call it a video phone in the movie, but it's a webcam and mic here on our laptops. That movie had it in there way before its time. It also had lunar module landings. It had spacewalking, basically. It had all these things, the space suits. Everything was designed off of that. Now, some of the things didn't come to pass, of course, and that's just Hollywood. You have to prepare it. You have to make it visually exciting. But the way the ships were designed, everything in the movie, the spinning gravitational field that's done in there, there's all these designs that he saw in that movie, and the technology basically that came to pass now. That's the creepy part about it. But getting back more to the story of the movie, the story starts off with the dawn of man, with the ape men basically, or the apes, finding this alien presence, if you will. See, Stanley Kubrick didn't do his little green men or anything like that with ray guns. Like I said, this is not a B movie. This is a serious movie that's very, very thought-provoking, that leaves a lot to you to decide where he was coming from or where it was going. That's what I think that made it great then, and it makes it great now. This movie is very mentally stimulating. It basically takes place, it starts with the dawn of man, and does it in segments basically, where they find this alien presence that is personified in an alien monolith, a black rectangle that just shows up one day, and whoever touches it or whenever its presence has been made known, it changes our history along the way. It basically teaches the apes to pick up tools in the form of a bone and use it to either hunt or to kill, basically, or that they didn't know how to do before. Then it kind of skips into the future, where you have the black monolith being discovered on the lunar surface. And there again, this is back when all you have to keep in mind in the back of your mind when you're watching this, man, as the 1960s, man had not went and done these things a whole lot yet. It was all still new. And Stanley Kubrick was basically in his own medium for telling the future. There again, that's the creepy part of the movie. They find the monolith again, in the year 2001, skipping ahead, on the lunar surface, and it starts to send out a radio signal to the Jupiter space system, basically sending off a kind of a notice to the alien presence that we have found them. We have started to communicate with them. We've become smarter. We have evolved from what we once were. Basically, then it skips into the future about 18 or months or a year and a half in the future, and it shows you a little more about it takes like kind of a side turn in the movie. It shows you a side story about how we are so dependent on technology. And a good segment of the film at that time is the astronaut mission going to Jupiter and how they have to deal with a maniacal computer called HAL 9000. Now we all know the stories. Let me digress for a second. We all know the stories about the HAL 9000 computer being mimicked by the IBM. If you notice, HAL is the offset letters of IBM, which is the big tyrannical computer of the day was IBM. And it's covered in the special features about how this was not thought of in production. Although sorry folks, I'm sorry, I'm the ever skeptic. I do not believe that. I know Stanley Kubrick had to have been saying something whenever he named it the HAL 9000, or Arthur C. Clarke had to do that at that time. But we won't go into that any further. But the HAL 9000, if you will, basically goes crazy and starts killing off all the people on the ship by killing their life support that are in hibernation. Hijinks ensue. I don't want to ruin it if you've never seen it, but at the same time, to kind of guide you along the process of the story, it's about one man's journey, the one surviving astronaut, how he takes care of he gets around the HAL 9000 computer and completing the mission. He goes out, and then it goes into the last segment of the film where he meets with the alien presence. That's when your real thought-provoking part of the movie comes into play. You really have to let your mind interpret it for your own self, because it gets very, very abstract at that point. He goes through an aging process, and almost what I take from it is that he is reborn into the alien's vision of what we were supposed to be. So basically, the alien makes him comfortable, takes him through the age of his life, basically, and then he is reborn as a star child at the end of the movie. There is a sequel to this movie, 2010, by Peter Hyams. That'll be reviewed another day. Let's go through the special features here, guys. There's a commentary by the star Keir Dullea and Gary Lockwood, Channel 4 documentary. Very great behind-the-scenes special features. Vision of a future past, prophecy of 2001, 2001 effects and early conceptual art. It's got a audio recording of Stanley Kubrick himself and his thoughts on the film. Theatrical trailer. Guys, it's a cheaper Blu-ray out there. If you want a good definitive edition of 2001, you've got to get your hands on the Blu-ray edition. There is a gigantic leap in the picture quality of this movie. I mentioned before in another video that this movie does have a different kind of aspect ratio. It's not a big deal, but it's a 2:1 ratio. It's not something that you're going to see a whole lot of, so it's kind of like an experimental widescreen. It's halfway in between a 1:8:5:1 traditional widescreen and then the Panavision skinny widescreen of 2:3:5:1. It's got a new 5:1 surround sound mix. Very, very, very clear, very good sound on this movie. It is a bit slow plotting movie. You're not going to get the big bang zoom Star Wars feel to it, but it is a very, very thought-provoking movie. It plods along at 148 minutes, so sit down. You're going to have to sit for a while, and it's going to build suspense, so don't expect anything to just jump off the screen at you every 5 minutes. There again, this is where it started, folks. Movies that came later, Star Wars, the Alien movies, you name it. If you really take a hard look at this movie, you'll see where they got their cues. The big long plotting shots of the starcraft, all that stuff, the spaceships, all that. There again, guys, it's a classic. I don't know what else I could have said about it, but 2001 Space Odyssey is where all our later spaceship movies came from, or science fiction movies took a lot of cues from. Stanley Kubrick at his best back in the day. Got to get it for your collection, especially if you're a science fiction buff. This has been my review of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Still very thought-provoking. It's one you have to think about. Not to everybody's taste by today's standards, but if you want to know where the new Bang Zoom movies came from, go back and watch 2001. You might like it, you might not. Take care, guys.